Well, it's my pleasure now to introduce Ed Vaizey. Like me, he's a product of Merton College, Oxford. The difference is that he was about 20 years after me.
You were far more successful.
That remains to be seen. He's now, of course, Shadow Cultural and Creative Industries Minister. He had a significant private sector career before getting into Parliament. He worked for his party's research department. He was a director of a public relations company, chief speechwriter to Michael Howard, and also a freelance political commentator. Then he was elected MP for Wantage and Didcot in 2005, and just about a year ago he launched the Creative Industries Task Force. So Ed, please tell us about conservative policy, and please join me in welcoming him.
Thanks very much. It's very good to be here, and particularly as Open House, as it still is hosting this evening. I've known Victoria for more years than I should admit to, and as a young man, I was a volunteer with Open House for a couple of years before Victoria saw sense. I'm very passionate about good design and architecture in buildings, and I took a risk recently in my constituency, which is not something that any MP should do, where we face the usual challenge of a large-scale development arriving in a relatively peaceful market town, and as a result, civil war has broken out between 3 or 4 communities that have lived relatively harmoniously together since the end of the English Civil War. And this is partly the government's fault, and it's partly my local Conservative District Council's fault that this situation has arisen. And I asked Terry Farrell to come down and talk to the community about what he would do if he got the chance to put together a master plan for Wallingford, which is the town I'm lucky enough to represent in Parliament, as well as Wantage and Didcot and Farringdon. And it was a very instructive meeting because obviously Terry talked in a much wider context about the landscape of Wallingford, or more accurately his partner did, and people were very enthused and excited about that. And as a result, Terry's been commissioned to do a master plan for Wallingford, which may or may not be successful, depending on what he actually comes up with. But it was very instructive to me to see how you could involve the local community and how you could approach the issue of development from the bottom up, taking into account what is in effect a historic landscape that's been shaped over many hundreds of years. And I think the mantra that I keep hearing from architects and many other people is that the big problem we face in this country is that we no longer have a planning system, we have a development control system. And that is something that I would passionately hope to change, where we are constantly fighting large developers and large developments who have no stake in their community, who only go through the motions of consulting with their local community, and who end up building an addition to that community that could be built, frankly, anywhere in the country, possibly anywhere in the world, possibly anywhere in the solar system. So I think we need to raise substantially the status of planning, the status of design, the status of architecture, and involve local communities from the bottom up. I've toyed with the idea of coming forward with a policy of a chief architect. I then discovered that the architectural community is as political and divided as the political community. And I was advised that if you appointed a chief architect, whoever that architect was, he or she would immediately alienate 50% of the architectural profession. And other people have advised that perhaps it would be better to have a chief designer so as not to alienate planners and designers. But I am a huge supporter of the Commission for Architecture and the Built Environment, and it might also be the case that a chief designer or chief architect would undermine what I think is the good work they do. So at the risk of consensus breaking out, I would congratulate the government on setting up CABE and will assure you that its work will continue if the Conservatives are elected as the next government. What I've succeeded in doing as the champion of architecture, as it were, within the Conservative Party is persuading my colleagues in the Department of Communities and Local Government to take architecture and design as seriously as I do. I'm delighted that in our planning green paper we've stated that any local plan will now have to contain mandatory design and architecture standards that any developer would have to meet. I'm delighted that we are now supporting schemes and experiments like inquiry by design and charrettes, and that we put local community involvement in any development at the centre. There are a number of other initiatives in the planning green paper which may or may not interest you, including incentives, particularly for local councils to build new homes, whereby they get an uplift in their council tax income as a result of building new homes. And I think that's very important. I think we need more coordination between the various organisations that do have a role in shaping architectural policy. And looking across the landscape, you've got CABE, you've now got the Homes and Communities Agencies, which thanks to an amendment put down by Alan Howarth now has a design mandate as well. You've got the RIBA, obviously not a government organisation, but extremely influential and important. You've got the architecture centres, and you've also got English heritage. And I think it's very, very important to try and bridge the divide between, as it were, the heritage lobby and the architecture lobby, if I can put it that way. The other thing I think we need to do, and has been our policy for many years, and may or may not result in wild cheers of delight or catcalls and boos, is we plan to abolish the Architects Registration Board. Thank you very much.